What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tsla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the economic calendar moving forward, talk about some big things that Jerome Powell said about the economy, not to mention some new news involving earnings and such. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. The offer ends very soon in just a couple of weeks. Anyways, now let's talk about the market. So as far as SPY goes, this held up very, very nicely. The market held up nicely after Jerome Powell gave a speech, and there is potential for the market to try to push a little higher tomorrow. However, just know that we are hitting some tough resistance areas the closer we get to the big 600 area. And the closer we get to that, the more likely it is for us to see a little bit of a very healthy pullback, because the market is, once again, not only due for that, but we're approaching some new levels, which could be very, very tough to break. So I'm going to be 100% blunt and honest about that. Yes, the market could push a little higher, but we have to be a little bit more careful with the way that this market is moving. So what happened today? What did Jerome Powell say? We'll talk about that first, and I'll break down the charts. Just know that for today, tech held the market up as we're seeing the QQQ and the Nasdaq breaking all-time highs. We saw Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft, Google, they're all pumping quite a bit. We saw the finance sector with Berkshire Hathaway, JP Morgan, many of them slowing down. We had retail still holding up quite well, and everything else was very, very mixed, except for consumer durables like Tesla holding up quite well. So very mixed market today. Most of tech were holding us up, though. That's the main things to remember. Moving forward, what is going on with how things went? We had Jerome Powell giving a speech at the conference today, and then for tomorrow, it's going to be Friday. Basically, remember that at 10 o'clock a.m., we have some Michigan consumer sentiment data that might cause some volatility. Then we have Bowman giving a speech, but that's pretty much it. Everything's going to be quite minor in terms of data. However, we had FOMC today, and sometimes you get a delayed reaction. So there's a very, very good chance the market may continue to react to that, which could lead to a little bit more upside tomorrow morning. The market got bought up because of how Jerome Powell was quite optimistic. But like I said before, there is still risk in the market despite that. So what did the big guy say? What is Jerome Powell talking about this time? He gave his same speech as he typically does, and he did say some important things. He mentioned that the Fed is continuing to maintain their 2% target for inflation, and simultaneously they're going to be monitoring basically what's happening with the labor markets. He said that right now the labor market is doing a good job. And he said the economy is very, very resilient, despite lots of fears that are emerging. He said that right now the yields are being a little bit more, he said they're just exaggerating right now. They're being a little bit fearful, and they shouldn't really worry too much, and things should subside as time goes on. And he continued to reiterate the fact that he believes that the economy is in a good place. So he's very optimistic. He's still saying the same things that he's been saying. He was also questioned about if he would resign if asked to by President Trump, because obviously President Trump has had a lot of things to say about Powell. Honestly, guys, he said that he can't be fired just like that, right? There's a process for that to happen. And it can't just be solely said by just the president. It's not that simple. But basically, he said the truth. Like, he can't just be fired just like that. It's not going to take 1 second, one word from Trump. And I personally presume that Trump is not just going to fire him like that, because I still think he has a couple of years left for his term. I'm referring to Powell, by the way. So for Powell, I think that if anything, he's going to be more pressured by Trump. I think that's what's going to most likely happen. Powell is going to be pressured by Trump to cut rates even more, to be even more aggressive at that. So we'll see what happens, but I don't think that Powell's going to fire him. I don't think that's most likely going to be the case. And I think that things should be fine, at least from that end. We'll just see how things continue as time goes on. But for the most part, Powell just said the same stuff. He was very ambiguous about how they have to wait and see how things end up going. He didn't say anything that was too out of the ordinary, just the same speech he tends to give. But the main thing was what he said about involving how he's not going to leave, even if people try to get him to resign, he's not going to do it. And then he also talked about, the economy remaining quite stable so far. So it's the same things, essentially. The Fed gave us a 25 basis point cut, by the way. That's exactly what we were expecting. That's why the market held up. So that's the reason why. Going back, just know that for earnings, we had Moderna. I talked about this in my morning videos about how they had better profits than expected. Then we have DraftKings, Rivian, and a few more announcing earnings today. I'm just going to go over those two. So starting off with the Rivian. Rivian is basically in a very, very interesting place. They basically missed Wall Street's third quarter expectations, including a massive difference in revenue of about $116 million. They also had a net loss that was narrowed year over year to about $1.1 billion compared to about $1.3 billion. So that's not too bad. So their net losses actually decreased. But then their loss per share is at 99 cents, so not that great. Revenue is at 874 million, below expectations. Not the best of earnings, but what was good for them is the fact that they are saying that they have plans to achieve modest positive gross profits during the fourth quarter of this year. So Rivian is telling us that for the fourth quarter, things should improve a lot. That's the reason why Wall Street started to buy the stock up after it dipped so much over the last couple of days, which is bullish news nonetheless. For other factors out there, just know that revenue has jumped about 39% year over year in Q3. That's pretty good for DraftKings. But despite that, their average revenue per MUP was down about 10% year over year. So that's during the quarter to about 103 million, which is below what the consensus happened to be. So because revenue in certain sectors of revenue are not that strong, and because of other factors such as the fact that there are some concerns about like next year and their guidance and such, that could lead to some weakness, and that's part of the reason why we saw a bit of a sell-off. So that's the reason why earnings were not as great as what some Wall Street analysts were expecting. Now, for other pieces of news, just know this. As far as SPY is going, we have basically 334,000 almost of these calls expiring, and we have over 725,000 puts expiring. So we have a 2.24 put to call ratio. The majority of positions are in puts. So we'll see what happens going into tomorrow. But what I think is going to happen is this. Right now, we are looking a little bit more bullish. It does look like the market's going to attempt to go a little higher. But just know this, we're approaching the upper trend line of this wedge. So if you look at the wedge like this, we had this wedge that we've been following for quite some time. We lost the wedge, then we reclaimed it. So technically, the support is, it's not only broke through the support, but now we're testing resistance very soon. So it could push a couple of points, get very close to 598 or so. So very close to this resistance, and we'll see if we get a rejection or not. But just know this, we are looking more bullish for now. We might attempt to go a little higher. And then I do think that there's going to be a risk of us potentially slowing down as the day goes on. Then at the end of the day, we might get bought back up again. So that's what my prediction essentially is. We're going to be looking for a pump and SPY and attempt to get back up towards this upper resistance. As long as we try to hold above 596, we could get very close to about 598. And then if we end up losing the support right over there, we're basically looking at 595 as our main support. If that fails us, we could be dipping back down to 592. I think we're going to push a little bit towards this resistance, a little bit more, and then there might be a slowdown coming. I think we are kind of due for that, and it's a Friday, which is why we might see some profit taking. So we might pump a bit for basically 598, start dipping back down for 594, maybe a little bit below that, then get a bounce back up and close pretty flat. I think that's the most likely case for tomorrow. Look for a little bit more upside and a bit of a sell-off back down to our imbalance down here before we try to bounce. So a pump and dump is what I'm expecting tomorrow, then a nice push at the end of the day. For ES, I see the same thing essentially developing. So on ES, I wouldn't be surprised if we try to push a little bit higher. We do have this very, very key area around the 6,000 zone. Look for 6,025 to 6,050 to be retested. Then we might be dipping back down towards 5,950 before it tries to bounce again and close quite flat. But I think that's most likely what ES is going to be doing. Look for a little bit more upside tomorrow morning than a dip as the day goes on, with a lot of sideways price action as it's going to be a Friday. I think that Nvidia is going to be pushing for the 150 area. We'll see if we break that for 152. 150 to 152 could be coming tomorrow. Then we might slow down and start dipping back down towards the mid 140s for a small little dip before it tries to bounce again. But look for a little bit more upside for the 150 area. We'll see if it rejects there as we've been a little bit overextended. So look for more upside and we'll see what kind of reaction we get towards 150 to 152. For Bitcoin, we are bullish, but we are starting to slow down here in terms of our momentum. We could pop a bit for 76,250 and start dipping back down for 74,800 before it tries to bounce again. A pop and drop coming down to fill this imbalance, and a bounce again is most likely what I'm seeing. For Tesla, we did a great job at pushing, but just know this, we're approaching the psychological 300 area. We might see Tesla attempt to go a little higher, so I could see us attempt to do that for 300. If that breaks, we could be going even higher for about 302. The low 300s could be coming. But then I think Tesla might slow down as the day goes on and make its way back down for 290 before bouncing and closing in the 290s again. So look for a push in the morning, a nice push into the 300 area, then a dip back down to 290, then a bounce and a close that's kind of flat, most likely for Tesla. For NQ, we're bullish. There's no sign of this slowing down yet, especially as tech like Nvidia and Apple are holding up well. So I think that we're going to most likely see another continuation higher for 21,300. Might be pushing a little bit higher. Then we might slow down as the day goes on, start dipping back down for basically 21,100. Then a bounce back up to see a sideways day as the most likely case. That's what I presume is going to likely happen to NQ. For the QQQ, we could be pushing close to 515, but then be careful at 515. It's going to be a tough resistance. We might push a little higher for 515. We'll see if that breaks or not. Then we could slow down, make our way back down for 510 to 512 before we come back up again. So look for a push for 515 and a slowdown as time goes on for the QQQ. For Apple, we remain more bullish as we're holding above 226. Just keep that in mind, guys. We're actually doing a very good job at holding up for Apple stock. As long as we don't lose 226, I think it's very possible we try to push up for 230 before it starts to slow down again. So look for 228 then 230 is our targets and the slowdown after that as the most likely cases, and we'll see how things go. I was calling out NEO as a potential short, but right now it is trying to get bought back up. There is a possible head and shoulders like structure. It's still valid. It's still possible it pumps a bit and slows down as the time goes on. But for the time being, we are still looking like we might try to push for about the mid fives. 5.5 could be coming, then a rejection against. Just keep that in mind. Netflix is squeezing. We're going to be looking for a test of 800 tomorrow. So look for a little bit more upside. Be careful at 800, though. It might slowly get a little bit above that, then slow down back down. The breakout area is at 772. So look for 800 and the slowdown as time goes on is the most likely case. For CELH, we might be looking for 30.5, then 31 is our resistance areas. Might be looking for a little push right over here for a nice little rebound attempt, as long as we hold 30. If 30, however, fails us, we're looking for a move back down for 28.75. I presume that 30.5 to 31 is coming before we see another reaction. Just keep that in mind. Palantir pumped very nicely to about 56.5, coming short of 57. I was talking about 57 coming, but now it's trying to kind of like, it's testing some tough resistance, basically. So I think what's going to happen is this is going to pull back a bit. We might attempt to push closer to 57 before it starts pulling back, but I think this imbalance down here is going to fill around 54.2. So look for 57 and 54.2 as our potential targets. A pop and drop as the most likely case. Supermicro dumped really hard, but I said yesterday to watch 20. If we hold 20, it's going to try to rebound. If we lost 20, we're going to be looking for a rejection. Right now, it's forming a nice cup. It might be looking for an attempt for 26.8, then eventually just under 30. So look for a little bit more upside for 26.8 or above before it starts to slow down. But I presume there's going to be a little bit more upside coming for Supermicro. This is just a temporary move. It might just temporarily push up. It was due for a little bit of a bounce, especially because of the fact that we got some good revenue. So we'll see how things end up progressing as time goes on. Look for a dip and a bounce. Look for an attempt to get back up to 26.64, and we'll see how it reacts to that. For Rivian, after earnings came out, because of the fact that they're projecting a profit for Q4, the share price looks more bullish on the 4-hour. Might be looking for a test of 10.26 for tomorrow, a little bit above that, before it starts to slow down again. So 10.26 to 10.4 is likely coming all the way up here in the mid-10s before we start to slow down as time goes on. I find that to be the most likely case. For so far, we're in a bit of an uptrend right here. It is possible we actually retest 11.8 before it tries to bounce and start pushing higher, but we're doing a good job. I think we could push for 12 and start to slow down for this gap fill for 11.8 before we start to consolidate again as the most likely case. Why do I say that? Because we're range bound between 11.5 and 12. So I think we're just going to be trading sideways. Look for a pop and a drop and some more sideways price action. For the IWM, we're range bound right now between 235 and basically this 238 area, going back and forth and back and forth. I think that tomorrow it might try to pop a bit again for 238 before it starts dipping back down for 235. So I think we're just going to be range bound for now, and I find that to be the most likely case. For AMD, we look more bullish. We're looking for a push attempts to get up higher. As long as we don't lose 149, I'm looking for a push back up for 154. I think AMD looks a little bit more bullish, so watch and see 150 if it holds. If it doesn't hold, we dip back down for 149. If it does hold, we're looking for a bounce. I am presuming we're going to most likely see upside. As long as we hold above 149, I'm looking for 152.5 then 154. I do believe there's more upside for AMD. For ARM, we're going to be dipping a little bit. We have 150 as our main support. If that fails us, we're going to be coming back down for 145. I presume we're going to be dipping back down for 148, then we'll see if we bounce or not. We could be dipping down, and then we'll have to see how things end up going. ARM might be dipping a little bit lower, but then we'll see how it goes, so just keep that in mind. For Coinbase, we have a bearish divergence here. We need to try to break past 255. Otherwise, we're at risk of coming back down to about 247 to 250. So I think 250 to 247 is most likely coming, and we'll see if we get a bounce off of that or not. So look for a little bit more downside, and we'll see what the move happens to be from there. For Amazon, we're on a bit of an uptrend right here. We'll have to see if we break past 212. I think that there is going to be a risk of it coming back down a little bit, so it might dip closer to about 208 if 210 does not hold us, and then we could get a bounce for now, but the trend still remains bullish. Look for a small dip and a bounce is the most likely case, as we're still making higher highs and higher lows. If we lose to 208, I will turn more bearish, but that has not happened yet. So for now, look for a small dip and a bounce is the most likely case. For Meta, we look bullish. It might cool off on the R side just a bit as we're up 3%. So it might retest 585 before it tries to bounce again. This imbalance towards 600 could be tested, so I think it's going for 600 plus. And eventually it's going to break out more. It might dip a little bit first before it tries to continue to push, so just keep that in mind. There's potential for Meta to pump even more. Microsoft looks more bullish as long as you don't lose 420. We're favoring a pushback up for 430 basically. So I think we might retest 423.5 before it tries to bounce for 428 to 430. So I still see some more upside potential. Google looks more bullish. We're looking for a target of about 183.6. I think it's going to be testing that tomorrow for more upside, which gives tech more potential to push. Yes, tech may slow down after pushing a little bit, but we'll have to wait and see about that because for now the charts remain bullish. GameStop, for those who are interested, is doing a good job at holding above its 20 EMA. As long as we don't lose 22.93, we favor upside. Our next target is going to be 23.8, eventually the 24s. AMC's bearish after earnings came out, might be retesting 4.25, so we'll see if it bounces or not. DJT is continuing to dip after Trump's victory. It might be coming back down for 25 flat. If that doesn't hold, we're looking for 22, but overall it's still holding up nicely. It might dip a little bit more though, so we'll see how it goes. The VIX remains bearish. There's no sign of a bounce yet. We talked about this yesterday. We are approaching a big support around 15, so we'll see if 15 holds us. It loves to bounce between 15 and 14.5, so maybe it dips a little bit more as the market pushes, but then we'll see if the VIX gets a bounce. That could be a sign the market's about to dip a little bit. The 10-year dipped because of the Fed, but we'll see if we hold our 20 EMA or not. We might be dipping for 4.3 to see if the 20 EMA holds. If it holds, we bounce. If not, we're going to be dipping, so watch and see. For the dollar index, we're dipping right here. If we lose 104.27, we're going to be dipping back down towards 104. And if we hold above 104.48, we could be dipping back up. So I think we're on a bit of a downtrend here. We could be dipping lower towards the 104s, and we'll see how things end up going, at least moving forward. With that being said, guys, I want to thank you all so much for listening. So please have a very, very fantastic rest of your day. For now, the market's more bullish. It's on a very, very strong uptrend for the time being, and then we'll see how things end up going. I think that we could push a little bit higher, but be careful. Heed my warning, be careful, because the market's becoming riskier the higher we go. We pump so much without any sort of pullback. So yes, we might go a little higher tomorrow morning, but there could be a little pullback coming intraday. So I would just want to give you guys a warning about that because of how overextended we tend to be. Just keep that in mind. It is a Friday. There's going to be a lot of manipulation. Don't forget about the options chain. I'll be back tomorrow to give you guys another update. Don't forget that for tomorrow, we have some data coming out after market open. We have the Michigan Consumer Sentiment data. So we'll see how things end up going. I appreciate you guys so much for listening. So please have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. And I'll see you guys again before market open. Thanks again for listening, and peace out.